Hey, this is the World Advice Channel too. What I want to talk about today is the problem with a YouTuber by the name of 2nacheki. So for this video, I will discuss the two main problems with her when it comes to the message that she puts out there for her YouTube videos. So now that I mentioned that, let's get started. So when it comes to the problem with 2nacheki, what exactly is the problem with 2nacheki? At least the first of the two main problems with 2nacheki. Well, the first problem with 2nacheki is that she's just another rage bait black YouTube channel where she just focuses on talking about topics from a perspective that is just meant to get black people angry and full of hatred towards white people instead of actually realizing a lot of our problems as black people is actually ourselves. So let's focus more on blaming other people instead of realizing that we as a black community ourselves, a lot of us at least, have to start taking accountability and realize most problems we have is actually our own fault, whether it comes down to how bad black businesses are done, you know, or I should say run for that matter, to just the fact that black people who have potential just aspire to really just be musicians or athletes and all that type of stuff. Let's forget about all that type of stuff and let's just focus on blaming white people and this and that for everything. And that's the problem with Tunacheki, her YouTube channel, is that she just goes down that road that so many black YouTubers who talk about politics and stuff goes out. Let's blame everything on white people. Let's blame things on systemic racism, the history of things that happened over 100 plus years ago, and all these rules and all these things that they did to make sure black people could not succeed and all that type of stuff, instead of realizing that even though there might be some truth to that, yes, it is a hindrance, or I should say a boundary, when it comes to preventing us from succeeding in a certain extent. There's a lot of things that are happening that have absolutely literally nothing to do with the history of racism and all that type of shit. A lot of it has to do with the fact that a lot of black people are just not doing well a good job and finding ways to actually, when it comes to legally speaking, of course, actually doing the things that they need to do in order to make sure that they can make a good amount of money. That's what I'm trying to get at here. I'm so sick and tired of, because the thing is, of course, which is the reason why I made this video, is I'm so sick and tired of hearing this shit. It's let's blame white people, let's blame white people, let's blame white people. Let's talk about the history of racism and this and that and all this type of stuff. And they do it all the time. And yes, 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 it is true. White people do sabotage shit sometimes. They've been caught doing it. I'm not going to deny that fact. But at the same time, most of it, especially when you take into consideration that obviously, as you can tell by the content of our video, that most of the demographic of people who watch our videos are black people in the African diaspora, whether it could be places like obviously, aside, in North America, like Canada and of course United States, and stuff like that. Obviously, as a result of the fact that most black people who would obviously watch her videos, unlike her who's an African, of course, black people in African diaspora, of course, are black people of African descent who came over to this part of the world in due to slavery and all that type of stuff, okay? Since obviously the majority, like I was getting at before, of her viewers are of African diaspora descent, you would obviously realize that most of them, of course, no surprise, would of course be African American. That's not just Canada, because it's not just Canada and the Caribbean and all, but it's America. And the thing about America is that there's easily over 40 million black people in the United States. Even though that's a small percentage of America's overall population, that's still a lot of fucking people. How the hell are you telling me white people can sabotage everybody for a nation of 40 some, I mean, for a population more like of 40 some million people? That's what I'm trying to get at here. A lot of it is because a lot of black people are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And if you ask black people who actually have worked with black businesses, in other words, supported black businesses and all that stuff, they'll tell you the exact same freaking thing. that a lot of black businesses are not organized. They're all over the place. They don't know what they're doing. They're jumping up and down. Sometimes literally when you ask them for something and all that type of shit, and it's just like what the fuck is going on here? And that's why our community is not really getting anywhere. And this has been going on for literally years, and it hasn't freaking stopped. And that's exactly the truth of the matter. But that's a thing that people like her don't want to take an accountability. Okay, everyone is just, let's blame white people for everything. White people, white people, white people. It's their fault for everything. And in the end of the day, God forbid, next thing you know, we do something and we fight against racism, and we, of course, no surprise, you know, hold the racist white people accountable, which, even though that would be a good thing, who might have created these systems and rules that 2nacheki is talking about, the thing is, then after that, just like a lot of things relate to black people, I just have a feeling, that we're just going to realize at the end of the day, once again, we are our own worst enemy. Because then we get rid of these racist ass rules that people like 2nacheki are talking about, like gerrymandering and all that stuff. And next thing you know, we're still having a problem with other black people when it comes to, being able to work with them, and when it comes to them doing a good job on what they're supposed to be doing. And that's what I'm trying to say. You don't want that to happen, because then it would make people even more disillusioned and more screwed up in the head. And that's what I'm trying to say. And that's why I have a problem with people like 2nacheki. Because the biggest problem and the biggest enemy, undeniably, is from within our own community. It's not up for debate. Anyone who tells you otherwise doesn't know what they're talking about. It is our own people, and they haven't acknowledged that. And everyone just wants to blame white people for everything. But at the end of the day, we need to start having accountability, and that's my first point. Now, my second point, that's a problem with 2nacheki, is this whole way of thinking that, oh, let's trust China, which a lot of Africans do, and it's actually been a cause of a lot of issues between people in the African diaspora and, of course, people from African descent, more like. Because the truth of the matter is, China in itself, because I have seen some of her videos, she seems to take pride in the fact that Africa is doing business with China. And I'm just thinking to myself, history really does have a way of repeating itself. Because the truth of the matter is, look at China in itself, okay? China doesn't even treat its own citizens well, who are, of course, if you know anything about Chinese history, who are of Han Chinese descent. Chinese people don't even treat their own race well, okay? Let alone their other ethnic groups that make up Asia, or I should say make up China for that matter, like Tibetans or Uyghurs. They treat them horribly. What makes you think they're going to treat a group of people that are on the other side of the planet, who look completely different than them, even worse when they have a position of power? And that's a question I want to ask. And Africans seem to somehow not be willing to answer. And that's a problem I have with 2nacheki, and why it's good for people to actually use their head and not just fall for these silly rage baits that you see online all the time. Because the truth of the matter is, China is a communist nation, and what they're going to do to Africa is not even probably even worth mentioning if they were to have their way. Okay, and there's been many abuses and many mistreatments that have happened already towards black Africans from Chinese people. What do you think what do you think they're going to do when they have full-blown power? And that's exactly the question I want to ask. What do you think they're going to do? They're going to treat them even worse than humans. So the truth of the matter is, when I hear this shit about, oh, we don't like the West, we like China, it's like, why, like, China's not going to do anything better. Besides, at the end of the day, no matter how you look at it, Africa is the most resource based place in the face of the planet. Why the fuck do they even need anyone, for that matter? Most of the resources that the West gets and China gets is actually from Africa in of itself. So why do you need any of them? And this is the thing I've learned about life, okay? Whenever you have two people fighting and feuding, don't pick a side, especially in a case of like this. It's just like being a Native American. Do I pick the side of the British or the French, or do I just not pick any side? And it's the same thing for Black Africans. Don't pick a side. You don't have to pick the West. You don't have to pick Asia. Just do your own freaking thing. Because in the end of the day, they're all gonna fuck you over, and they're all just gonna use you as pawns in their scheme of things. So why the hell do you have to work on any other side? With the resources you guys have, especially if you can maintain it properly and do what you need to do to make sure you can control it, then they'll need you. You know, it's not even like this is the past where they could just declare wars because they need your resources. They're not able to do that. So why don't you just claim your resources and make sure you're the one who calls the shots? And that's what I'm trying to say. So anyway, this is my video. All I have to say is that I hope you enjoyed it. And just remember, if you like this video and videos like this, remember to thumbs this video up and hit the subscribe button. And this is all I have to say. And simply put, I'm out. So bye.